welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Friday, 22 August. I'm your host, Daniel, and today we're going to talk about Trump is going to meet South Korea's leaders. Europe says tens of thousands of soldiers need to help Ukraine. And Belarus is looking to put a nuclear weapon on a missile. So firstly, when South Korean leader Lee Jae-myung meets US President Donald Trump next week for their first summit, he'll face calls to pay more for the upkeep of American troops on the peninsula, with security issues expected to be among the top agendaed items. Left largely out of the frantic trade talks that culminated in an unwritten deal last month, questions over the future of the South Korean-US alliance and the approach to nuclear-armed North Korea will be key. So what? It's interesting to see here that South Korea are going to put pressure on the US, especially at a time when tensions are so high geopolitically, especially with China and North Korea. North Korea being very close to Russia at this point. The US, the Trump administration specifically seems to have lost a lot of ground here with South Korea, with essentially them putting pressure on them to either pay more money to keep the troops in South Korea or fuck off. It's a bit of a change, and is likely coming from, the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration around other countries not supporting the US, and also these tariff and trade deals that are pretty costly to the South Korean economy, who make a lot of tech. But we've also seen South Korea look for trade deals with China and other non-traditional partners, which was another sign that South Korea is starting to stray away from their traditional kind of very US-focused relationship. And this loss of power is highly likely linked, to these tariffs. But no, it's a very interesting time, and not with tensions rising between China and Taiwan, losing influence over South Korea could be quite detrimental as a pretty considerable base of support in the region for a long time now. Oh well. And next, European leaders must not be naive when discussing Ukrainian peace force, but face the reality that they will need to deploy tens of thousands of troops to the country for the long term, the head of Germany's Soldiers' Union said. US President Donald Trump is seeking to broker peace between Moscow and Kiev, but has ruled out sending US troops to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron and the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have both spoken in favour of troop deployments in a post-war settlement as part of a coalition of the willing, with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz also signalling openness to Germany's participation. So what? It's good to see someone calling out the reality of what this troop deployment would actually look. If it is going to dissuade Russia from continued aggression, then it would need to be a considerable force backed up with a lot of military hardware. It would likely be very costly and need to be built relatively quickly. It would be a monumental task and something that hasn't been done in a very long time. It's also possible that it would need the backing of the UN to, just get that nice humanitarian seal. Kind of on a side note, it's pretty interesting that Germany has a soldiers' union. This is not something that we have in New Zealand. It's kind of cool to see. I wonder how that affects German soldiers' paying conditions. It must make things difficult for the German government not being able to just fuck over the boys, which is a pretty common move against soldiers. This is good. It's a reality check, but also I think it's something that's definitely worth doing in the long term for European security and stability. And lastly, Belarus is assessing how best to ramp up domestic production of missiles, including exploring how to equip its current rocket launcher system with a nuclear warhead, a senior Belarusian security official said on Thursday. Belarus is a close ally of Russia, said this week that it would deepen bilateral ties with Iran and also cooperate with China on weapons development. It does not possess its own nuclear weapons, but hosts Russian tactical ones, which remain under Moscow's control. So what? This is pretty crazy to for them to come out and say, as you know, it's not their nuclear weapons, and they do not have the technology to launch them. Apparently, so why they would need to build their own domestic rocket that can house a nuclear warhead is beyond me, unless they're planning on telling Russia to fuck off and just keep the nukes so they can use them themselves. It's pretty scary because Lukashenko's a fucking lunatic at the best of times. So yeah, this distribution of nuclear weapons is kind of something the world has tried to stop for a very long time, to ensure that, you know, he can't just lose his mind and launch a nuke into Latvia for a laugh, which is always a risk when it comes to tin pot rulers. Yeah, it's going to be pretty challenging with current sanctions against Belarus. They probably can't bring in the technology required for these high-tech weapons, but China will likely be able to provide them with a lot of what they need. So yeah, they might be able to do it, but why they're trying to do it is kind of the question, and what they hope to gain out of it. Probably to just threaten the West and ensure that the West can't throw him out of control of his country, which his people definitely want. So yeah. Anyway, that's been the Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. No, you won't. I'll see you again on Tuesday. It's a public holiday in the UK on Monday. See you.